Hello and welcome. My name is Nicholas Davis, and I am the Director of Technical Services for the International Grooving and Grinding Association. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the future of quantifying carbon savings on our highway systems. Roadway owners and designers have always sought ways to optimize their highway spending as good stewards of the public domain, but more recently, they've been considering the critical need to evaluate how our roadways impact the environment as a result of trillions of vehicle miles traveled every year. And one of the most efficient ways to accomplish this is to decrease the amount of atmospheric carbon generated while driving cars and trucks on our roadways. So what is the best way to reduce use phase carbon? Well, would you be surprised if I said it would be to make our pavement smoother, safer, more comfortable to drive on? Well, it's true. If you improve the ride quality of a pavement, we increase the efficiency in which the vehicle traverses that pavement section, which increases the fuel economy. And not only does it reduce the carbon and make our roadways last longer, but it even saves our taxpayers money at the pump. What's the best way to improve ride quality on the pavements? You guessed it, diamond grinding. Now, in order to make it easier to quantify the environmental benefit with improved ride quality, the IGGA has partnered with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the Concrete Pavement Association of Minnesota, as well as other dedicated partners of the industry. And we've developed a new cost and carbon benefit calculator. Using easily obtained inputs such as, traffic counts, pre-grind and post-grind IRI, you can evaluate the cost and carbon savings. When evaluating concrete pavements, you can also account for the carbon sequestration, which is the result of reopening of the pores of the concrete surface when diamond grinding takes place. And once you have all of these inputs, you can put them into our calculator and get a 10 and 20-year savings evaluation. And in the vast majority of cases, you'll find that diamond grinding is cost and carbon neutral. And in certain scenarios, it's even cost and carbon negative. So under the Infrastructure Investment and Job Acts, we believe that this tool could be used to help secure federal funding for diamond grinding projects, ultimately improving our ride quality, safety, longevity, and overall sustainability of our pavement systems. To use this free calculator, go to our website at IGGA.net and click the Calculators tab at the top of the page. In the next segment of this video, I'm going to be showing you how to use this calculator effectively to get accurate cost and carbon savings estimates. Thank you. So we'll get right into it. We're going to start off with our pre-grind IRI. So this is where we started before we perform any work, and then we have our estimated post-grind IRI, or our real-world data IRI, collected with an inertial profiler after all work is completed, to include our full depth repairs, partial depth repairs, joint spalls, and of course our diamond grinding. We're going to include our traffic speed because this will have a consideration with the fuel consumption of the vehicles as this calculation is ran. And of course, we're going to have our average daily traffic, our percent trucks, and our estimated cost of fuel, right? Because we're trying to put a hard dollar figure to our current traffic counts and the way that they improve efficiency. So we're going to have our gasoline costs as well as our diesel costs, right? Trucks are going to be using a different fuel source that is a higher cost typically, and they burn fuel at a different rate. And we're going to have our length of road, of course. So the length of road is not going to be the lane miles in the project. This is going to be the length of the project. Now, the reason for that is, let's say hypothetically we have a 5-mile section and it's 4 lanes wide. So we would have a 20 lane mile project. However, anytime a vehicle crosses that section, they're only going to be traveling in 1 lane at a time, right? So they're going to drive 5 miles. They're not going to drive 20 miles on improved surface. So when we look at the lane width, now this is the time where we're going to consider the fact that we have 4 lanes wide. So for our diamond grinding cost estimate, we're going to make that 48 feet wide. Now, one of the things to consider is if we have a 14-foot wide lane, we want to make sure that we use this little question mark box here and take a look, and it will show you that if it's greater than 12 feet, use 16 feet as a width for that lane. Now, the reason for that is you're going to use the same amount of fuel to drive the diamond grinder over a 14-foot wide lane as you would a 16-foot wide lane, right? Because we're typically going to be using a 4-foot wide diamond grinding head, so it will still take a fourth pass of that pavement section in order to cover that extra 2 feet of a 14-foot wide lane. Now, same consideration, if we were to have an 11-foot wide lane here, we are going to want to use the number 12, right? We're going to want to use a 12-foot for the cost estimate purposes. And then, of course, we're going to want to include our diamond grinding cost, whether that's actual or estimated, and that will give us the cost, because when we do our final balance, we're going to show the cost of the grinding, both dollar figure as well as carbon, and how that impacts our total savings. Now we have this little checkbox at the bottom, and it says, is this a concrete pavement? If it is, we're going to say yes, and it's going to ask, do you want to include the carbon sequestration in your cost carbon benefit? So, carbon sequestration, when we diamond grind a pavement, we're opening up the pore structure of that pavement to allow more carbon to be sucked out of the atmosphere into the concrete pavement. So we're going to say yes. Let's take a look at it. Now, when I do that, you see here in the cost carbon benefit table that a new line pops up for carbon sequestration. So that's where that number is going to be output. And we also have a concrete strength. So one of the things about carbon sequestration is the amount of cement in the mix is going to impact how much carbon can be sequestered by the concrete. So we've created two categories here, a lower strength, which would typically represent a lower cement content, and a higher strength, which would typically represent a higher cement content. So we're going to pick the first one, and then we're going to have our actual lane width. So going back to my example about a 12-foot wide lane being, an 11-foot wide lane being called a 12-foot for the cost estimating purposes, we want to make sure we have the actual surface area for this calculation, right? So that's why we have a separate input box to show 11 feet, the true width of the lane. So now we're going to take a step over here to our cost carbon benefit table, and we will see that we have a fuel savings over 10 years of $2 million. This is just from an improved IRI, making the vehicles traverse the section more efficiently. And we're going to have a carbon benefit of 2,300 tons. We're going to now have a carbon sequestration benefit of 14 metric tons. And we're going to have a cost of diamond grinding of $649,000 and 190 metric tons of carbon. Now, the 190 metric tons of carbon comes from the fuel use to do the work of diamond grinding the surface of the pavement. So at the bottom, we have our total savings, right? So we're going to be saving our tax base $1.3 million at the pump over a course of 10 years. And as you can see, that's about twice as much money as the cost of the grinding itself. So that's quite impressive in terms of a benefit to our tax base. And then, of course, our carbon benefit is 2,121 metric tons over 10 years. And we also have our 20-year benefit, right, which for the savings of IRI is effectively 2 times that. For carbon sequestration, it's not exactly 2 times that, because what we have found is that carbon sequestration slows down over time as those pores start to fill with carbon. And then our cost of diamond grinding is going to stay the same because we're assuming we're not going back out there to perform the work again. So we have even more benefit over the 20-year period to evaluate. Thank you for joining us today, and please check out our website at IGGA.net. Thank you for joining us today, and please check out our website at IGGA.net.